Well, what does it say that the ex-president of Harvard is someone whose academic bona fides were found out to be plagiarized, largely?
I'm trying to say the balance between the sharp elbows and the sharp minds is wildly off. And why is it? Nobody wants to say what everybody is thinking, which is this person is not fit to be the president of Harvard University. And why is that? Because they're going to get called a name. This was made all about race. Oh, what, you can't tolerate scholarship of this quality from a black female? It's like, you're starting, I wasn't even questioning this before, but now you're saying a scholar's scholar? Methinks that does protest too much.
There was a quote from Howard Jacobson that said, "I hope Claudine Gay marks the start of people who know nothing losing their jobs."
Look, we need to bring back exclusion. We're talking way too much about inclusion. Inclusion and exclusion are two halves of a normal process. Claudine Gay needed to be excluded from that office, not included. Now, if you told me that Condoleezza Rice was the president of Harvard, she's black, she's female, and I don't agree with her politically. But I don't think many people would have a qualification issue with Condoleezza Rice. Or let's say James Gates is a black man, a distinguished physicist. This has to do with people coming from weaker subjects, particularly activist subjects that didn't exist before the late 60s, early 70s, when all of these things were created. You know, to an extent, when you had, I don't know if you recall the pictures of, what is it, Willard Straight Hall at Cornell with the black students emerging with weapons. You know, there was a revolutionary fervor at the end of the 60s, early 70s, and you have people creating like women's studies, black studies, African-American studies. And these departments were basically born of activism more than scholarship. I'm not saying no scholarship gets done there, but scholarship and activism are essentially fused. And many of us think activism is great, just don't do it next to our physics and math and computer science and music departments. You know, if what you're really there to do is to ignore certain things and accentuate others and not search for the truth, that's not an ignoble pursuit. It's just, that's not what scholarship is. Scholarship is about understanding things and getting them right. And we've gone down a terrible turn. But, you know, just consider, I think your listeners might enjoy Googling the string, cook something up to ease him out. That was a phrase that was used internally in documents within Harvard when a Kenyan was ejected from the Harvard economics department back in the 60s. And what had really happened is that this guy had passed all of his exams. He was fully qualified. He was working on his dissertation to become a Harvard PhD in economics. And the university, I think, decided that it didn't like an African man sleeping with white women in America. And it got rid of him, even though he was in good standing. The only reason we know about that is that turned out to be Barack Obama Sr. So Harvard conspired 100% with the State Department to destroy the career of Barack Obama Sr. And that's how Harvard worked. In the star chambers, it cooks. And what does it do? It cooks things up. It cooks up stories. It cooks up attribution. It gives people credit for things that they didn't do first. It takes credit away from other people. I was there in the mid-90s when it destroyed my wife's career through something, a star chamber called the Harvard Jobs Market Meeting. And all the economists go into a closed room, they lock the door, and they say, who's got a good student? And my wife was the student of a Nobel award winner in economics. And she had done something which was to bring an entirely new kind of mathematics into economic theory to replace something called the marginal revolution, a new form of differential calculus called gauge theory. And a guy named Dale Jorgensen, who recently died, said, nope. So even though a Nobel level economist was promoting her and saying this is great stuff, she should go anywhere in the country, a woman of color from the developing world, an old white guy just said no. And, you know, in a second, her position in the world is reordered in the pile. And why were they doing this? Because they wanted to fix the CPI. And I don't mean fix as in cure it. I mean fix as in fixing a baseball game. Because the CPI is used to transfer wealth.
What's CPI?
The Consumer Price Index. And the reason it's important is that mostly what the government does after its military is entitlements, Social Security payments, Medicare payments. And those are indexed to inflation. And the way in which it takes in money is through taxes. And those tax brackets are indexed to inflation. So it's very funny. Everybody focuses on like central banking and the Fed. But the Bureau of Labor Statistics maintains a statistic that transfers billions and billions of dollars. And if the CPI is overstated, it pays out a lot of money and takes in very little money. And if you can get it to be understated, then you get to take in much more money. You don't have to pay old and sick people. And that's what the Harvard department was doing.
So there's a single figure that mediates everything that gets squeezed through. How funny.
And so what we were doing as a collaboration was showing the right mathematical framework to calculate the CPI.
But that would have allowed less fuckery.
It would have allowed less, to use the technical terms.
So,
but the point being that the Harvard jobs market meeting inside of the Harvard economics department is a star chamber the way the immigration status of Obama's father was a star chamber, as was the way in which my PhD was. Over and over again, Harvard closes its doors and it makes stuff up.
This sounds unsalvageable. As
No.
It sounds like we've got the people leading it have gotten in through some combination of diversity, equity, inclusion, nepotism, game playing, harsh elbows. Seems like the people
They just hired a guy named Daniel S. Fried, who's one of the greatest mathematicians alive in my area. Dan and I might disagree about string theory. We can have scholarly disagreements. Just had lunch with him in Austin, Texas. That guy's a scholar through and through. I can disagree with him. I can fight with him. I can have my differences. I would support him 100% as a scholar to take over, as a provost or dean if they were interested. There's no shortage of absolutely fantastic people at Harvard.
But if they're unable or unwilling to play the political games that are required, unless they're prepared to file their elbows down to a sharp point.
Well, this is what Bill Ackman is doing that's so confusing. I have the feeling, I don't know this guy at all. Don't have positive, negative
I thought you would have crossed paths with him at some point.
You would think. There are various people who I don't cross paths with for whatever reason. I don't even think we follow each other. Or maybe I follow him, but I don't think he follows me. I think that the problem is that a lot of these people don't know how the research game works. They think about this in terms of the Harvard Business School, the law school, the undergraduate alumni network. They don't see the part of Harvard that actually produces the mystique, the analog of the racing for the exotic car. And I worry that the right thing to do right now is to appoint a curmudgeonly, research-oriented person in a super rigorous field. It doesn't even have to be STEM. Like music is an incredibly rigorous field. But what we need right now is rigor. We don't need another person from the social sciences at this moment. We need somebody to reestablish that Harvard is an intolerant place, that it has the highest possible standards. It's unabashedly elitist. It's unabashedly American. And it cannot live with DEI. DEI is a parasitization of our best hopes and dreams. And we have to recognize that DEI has to be destroyed so that goals like diversity and getting the right people into the room are not sacrificed on the altar of mediocrity and lack of ethics.
It's interesting that at places like Yale, they had made some changes to the ways that grades and diversity account for admissions, but they didn't get rid of legacy admissions, which kind of tells you everything that you need to know about what's being protected.
No, I don't think it does.
Is this not another way to ensure that the people, just to ensure that power is held in the people who already have it?
But very soon this thing isn't going to be worth very much.
I don't think that people care. I think this is the same as looking at why Marvel are going downhill.
Yeah. Say more.
There are a lot of movies coming out at the moment. I think the most recent Star Wars director openly said, "I enjoy making movies that make men feel uncomfortable."
To Jon Stewart.
Star Wars.
Yeah.
Maybe one of the most male-dominated audience movies that I can think of.
Yes, it's self-destructive. So what I'm trying to say is that you can say, oh, we're going to keep things open for legacy admissions, right? But very soon, you're not going to want to be associated with. I mean, already Yale has mismanaged its research university for years. It made a very bad decision not to go hard on sciences and STEM and focused, in my opinion, too much on softer fields. So what happens when Harvard is no longer that prestigious? If people start laughing at Harvard, what good is it going to be that you can get your kid in?
I don't disagree, but I think people are so out of touch. The people who are in power are unable or unwilling to see just how quickly the stock price is plummeting. I don't think that they're able to see this. Thinking about it, especially using the Marvel example again, or some of the things that are coming out of Disney, you have a quantifiable figure. What was the opening weekend at the box office? You know exactly where this is. There are fewer places to hide when it comes to that. Here's the number. What did it cost? What did you make opening weekend?
Right.
And you have projections and you have targets, presumably, that you want to hit. If that number doesn't cause people to think, maybe we don't need another narrative about an all-female cast that is better than the men without overcoming any challenges.
Sure, but what you're not looking at is, if you look at Mike Hopkins' work on the Covariant variant in the mathematics department, that's like opening weekend statistics. Man, great stuff happens at Harvard. Make no mistake about it. Harvard is an amazing and horrible place. And we're going to all now focus on how dumb it is and how horrible it is. And then you're not seeing the tragedy. You're not seeing, look, I didn't have an advisor. I was one of the only people you'll ever meet with a PhD that had no advisor. But the guy who saved me was named Raoul Bott. And Raoul Bott discovered something that's so important called Bott periodicity that if I could convey it to you, your mind would be, you'd think DMT was for children. It has to do with the fact that there are only 4 systems of numbers that have particular property, and one of those sets of numbers spins a merry-go-round with the other 3 with an 8-fold sort of symmetry. Who knew that this thing was even possible? It's an incredible fact about the world. I associate him with Harvard. That's unfudgeable. There's no one in the world who can tell me that Bott periodicity wasn't one of the most important things that happened in the 20th century. And to have a person like that, just feet from John Tate, I could go on and on about all the real things that happened in Harvard. What we need right now, look, I would love to run for president of Harvard. If Claudine Gay can be president of Harvard, so can I. And what we need is somebody who's been wronged by Harvard. You need somebody who has not been on this kind of escalator to power, who's constantly shown love by the system. There are all sorts of people that represent what I call black sheep Harvard. You've got white sheep Harvard and black sheep Harvard. And black sheep Harvard is no less important, but it's the people who are not loved by the system, who don't know when to shut up. The people who will take a stand and who will zig when everyone else zags.
Why would that be useful?
Because we've got to purge the university of the things that don't work, and it's going to be ugly. It's going to be unpleasant. It's going to be a civil war on the faculty.
I was learning about an idea, the Abene Paradox. It's one of my favorite ideas from last year. The Abene Paradox is a situation in which a group makes a decision that is contrary to the desires of the group's members because each member assumes the others approve of it. That explains how a number of accurate individuals can become idiots when they get together, kind of like the Emperor's New Clothes. An acquaintance invites you to his wedding, despite not wanting you there, because he thinks you want to attend. You attend, despite not wanting to, because you think he wants you there. At a business meeting, someone suggests an idea that he thinks the others will like, recruiting a trans influencer as the face of the brand. Each member has misgivings about this, but assumes the others will consider them transphobic if they speak out, so everyone approves of the idea, despite no one liking it. Abene Paradox.
Yeah. I like it. It has a lot to do with Timur Kuran's theory of preference falsification. I think that that's not exactly how it happens.
How so?
Most of the way these things work is that you're afraid to speak. Like, let's predict what's going to be said when this debuts. Sour grapes, grifter, charlatan, Eric doesn't like women. Eric doesn't like black people. Oh, such snobbery. What has he ever done? You know, we know what every action brings about in terms of its response. And that's kind of why we don't speak up. It's just not worth it. There are these horrible people that follow you around looking for you to say anything like, I don't know if she's qualified. It's like, did he say it? Can we get our knives out? That thing has to be driven out of the university. We can't have these people.
It's not just in the university, though, right?
No, but I'm saying the universities are special because if everyone is going to take power later passes through them, you can't afford to lose them. You can't afford to lose your news media. You can't afford to lose your universities. You can't afford to lose your political parties.
3 for 3 at the moment.
That's right. Yeah. But look, it's worth fighting for. So, they'll call me a bunch of names. They'll try to deface my Wikipedia entry. That's what they'll do.
In other news, this episode is brought to you by Element. Stop having coffee first thing in the morning. Your adenosine system that caffeine acts on isn't even active for the first 90 minutes of the day, but your adrenal system is, and salt acts on your adrenal system. This is the best way to start the day, and I've done it for over 3 years now. It's got a science-backed electrolyte ratio of sodium, potassium, and magnesium, which helps to curb cravings, improve brain function, and regulate your appetite. Best of all, there is a no BS, no questions asked refund policy, so if you're not sure, you can try it completely risk-free, and if you do not like it for any reason, they'll give you your money back, and you don't even need to return the box. That's how confident they are that you'll love it. Right now, you can get a free sample pack of all 8 flavors with your first box, plus that no questions asked refund policy by going to the link in the description below or heading to drinklmnt.com/modernwisdom. That's drinklmnt.com/modernwisdom. Thank you very much for tuning in. If you enjoyed that clip with Eric, you will love the full-length podcast, which you can watch right here. Go on. Tap it.